Ancient echoes in the dark, Doctor. Zara Vex pressed her forehands against the observation deck's reinforced glass, her compound eyes reflecting the massive structure floating in the void before them. 500 years of drifting through space had not been kind to the ancient station. Its hull was scarred by micrometeorites and cosmic radiation, whole sections blown out or collapsed inward like the ribs of some prehistoric beast. "By the Great Hive," she whispered, her translator converting her clicking speech into standard Galactic. "It's enormous." The human station stretched nearly 10 kilometers from end to end, a twisted spine of metal and composite materials that seemed to grow organically, rather than being built. Unlike the clean, geometric designs favored by modern civilizations, this thing looked alive, even in death. Organic curves blended with angular weapons platforms, while massive solar collectors spread out like metallic wings from the central hub. Commander Erix, the expedition's Valdorian military escort, shifted restlessly behind her. His scaled skin reflected the bridge lights as he studied the tactical displays. "My scans show no active power signatures, Dr. Vex. The structure appears completely dead. But those weapon emplacements..." He paused, running a clawed finger along his jaw. "I count at least 40 railgun batteries and what appears to be some kind of plasma lance array." Humans always were thorough in their preparations. Naya's voice drifted through the bridge like wind chimes, the Etherean's energy form shimmering near the communication console. Her species communicated primarily through emotional resonance, making her invaluable for archaeological work involving extinct civilizations. "I sense great sadness from that place. Loss. But also determination." Zara's antennae twitched with excitement. In the 3 years since the Galactic Archaeological Council had approved her expedition to study human ruins, she had catalogued dozens of sites. But this was different. This was intact, preserved by the vacuum of space and the station's remote location in the drift zone, that empty region between the territories of the 3 great powers. "Begin docking procedures," she ordered. "Full environmental suits, standard archaeological protocols. We don't know what kind of atmosphere, if any, remains inside." The shuttlecraft Seeker approached the station slowly, its pilot using maneuvering thrusters to navigate around debris fields and damaged hull sections. They found a docking port that appeared compatible with modern standards, though the design was distinctly human in its rugged functionality. As the airlock cycled, Zara felt the familiar thrill of discovery. Humans had vanished from the galaxy 5 centuries ago, leaving behind only ruins, legends, and 1,000 unanswered questions. The 3 major civilizations had divided up human space between them, but the Calarians had always been most interested in preserving human knowledge rather than claiming territory. The inner airlock opened with a hiss of equalizing atmosphere. Emergency lighting flickered on automatically, casting red shadows down a corridor that stretched into darkness. The air was thin, but breathable, kept viable by some backup life support system that had somehow survived half a millennium. "Remarkable," Zara muttered, scanning the walls with her instruments. "The materials are still structurally sound. Human engineering was impressive." They moved deeper into the station, their footsteps echoing strangely in the empty corridors. The walls were lined with what appeared to be memory panels, their surfaces dark and inactive. Zara paused to examine one, noting the intricate neural pathway designs etched into the metal. "These aren't just computers," she realized. "They're memory storage units, but the scale..." She gestured at the hundreds of panels lining the corridor. "This represents more data storage than most planetary archives." Commander Erix had his weapon drawn but not raised, his warrior instincts keeping him alert despite the apparent emptiness of the station. "Dr. Vex, you should see this." He had found a viewing port that looked into what appeared to be the station's central hub. The weighty chamber beyond was vast, filled with row upon row of cylindrical containers, each one roughly human-sized, but it was what floated in the center of the chamber that made them all stop and stare. A massive crystalline structure pulsed with faint internal light, its faceted surface reflecting and amplifying the emergency lighting. Neural pathways were etched into its surface, creating patterns that seem to shift and move when viewed directly. "It's beautiful," Naya whispered, her energy form brightening with curiosity. "And it's dreaming. I can feel it. Memories. Thoughts. A mind suspended between sleeping and waking." Zara's instruments were going wild. The quantum resonance patterns. This isn't just a computer core, it's a consciousness matrix. Someone's mind has been preserved, in there. Before anyone could respond, the lights around them suddenly blazed to full intensity. The station hummed to life with a sound like a great heart beginning to beat. Panels flickered and displays activated throughout the corridor. And, from speakers that had been silent for 5 centuries came a voice. "Well, well. Visitors at last." The voice was distinctly human, male with a warm accent that the translators struggled to place. It carried the weight of years and the depth of someone who had seen too much. "My apologies for the dramatic awakening. I've been running on minimal power for quite some time. I am Captain Thorne Blackwood, Commanding Officer of Research Station Echo 7, and you are?" Zara found her voice first. "I am Dr. Zara Vex of the Calarian Archaeological Council. This is Commander Urix of the Valdorian Defense Corps and Naya of the Etherian Collective. We thought this station was derelict." A sound that might have been laughter echoed through the corridors. "Derelict? I suppose that's one way to put it. I've been in deep hibernation mode, waiting for someone to come knocking. The question is, are you friend or foe?" "We're scientists," Zara said quickly. "Archaeologists. We study human civilization to preserve its legacy." "Ah, academics. How wonderfully civilized." The captain's voice carried a note of amusement tinged with something darker. "Tell me, Dr. Vex, what has become of humanity in my absence? I've been monitoring limited subspace channels, but the signals have been quiet." The 3 visitors exchanged glances. "How do you tell someone that their entire species had vanished?" Naya stepped forward, her empathic abilities allowing her to sense the emotional undercurrents in the captain's words. "Captain Blackwood, humanity disappeared from known space approximately 500 years ago. We don't know what happened to them." The silence that followed was profound. When the captain spoke again, his voice was quieter, more controlled. "I see. That explains the long silence. 500 years." The lights dimmed slightly, as if the station itself were processing this information. Then the Exodus protocol was activated. "The what?" Commander Urix demanded, his military training making him suspicious of unfamiliar protocols. "Something that should never have been necessary," Blackwood replied. "But if it was used, then humanity faced something so terrible that the only option was to disappear entirely. This station, Echo 7, is one of 12 research installations designed to preserve human knowledge and culture in case of species-wide extinction." The captain paused, and when he continued, there was a new edge to his voice. "But preservation was only part of our mission. We were also tasked with ensuring that whatever destroyed humanity would eventually face consequences." Alarms, suddenly, began blaring throughout the station. Red warning lights strobed in the corridors as automated systems activated throughout the massive structure. "What's happening?" Zara shouted over the noise. "Long-range sensors have detected 3 fleets entering this system," Blackwood announced, his voice now carrying the authority of a military commander. "Calarian, Valdorian, and Etherian vessels. It seems word of Echo 7's awakening has spread quickly." Through the viewports, they could see lights in the distance, growing brighter as ships dropped out of faster-than-light travel. The 3 great powers of the galaxy had arrived, and none of them looked friendly. "Captain," Commander Urix said urgently, "we need to evacuate. If those fleets engage each other in this system—" "They won't engage each other," Blackwood interrupted. "They're here for the station, for what it contains, and I'm afraid, my new friends, that you're about to learn why humanity built places like Echo 7. The station shuddered as massive systems came online throughout its structure. Weapon batteries that had been dormant for centuries swiveled toward the approaching fleets. The neural patterns in the central crystal matrix blazed brighter, and suddenly the walls around them were alive with data streams and tactical displays. You see, Captain Blackwood continued conversationally, as if he weren't potentially starting a war. Humans had a saying, "If you want to destroy us, you'd better make sure you get us all." The approaching fleets had begun broadcasting demands for surrender, each in their own language. But Zara noticed something that made her compound eyes widen in alarm. Similar signals were beginning to appear throughout the galaxy, faint but growing stronger. Other stations, other echo points, responding to Echo 7's awakening. "Captain," she said quietly, "exactly how many of these stations did humans build?" "Enough," he replied. "More than enough." The first shots from the approaching fleets lit up the darkness of space, but Echo 7's defensive systems were already responding. And somewhere in the depths of the station, other systems were awakening. Systems that had been built, not just to preserve human knowledge, but to ensure that humanity's enemies would never feel safe. The last echo of human civilization had begun to speak, and the galaxy was about to remember why it had once feared the species that built wonders and nightmares with equal skill. As the battle for Echo 7 began, Zara realized that their simple, archaeological expedition had just become the catalyst for something that would change the balance of power in the galaxy forever. The humans were gone, but they had left behind something far more dangerous than ruins. They had left behind their will, their determination, and their promise that even in death, they would not go quietly into the dark. When sleeping giants. Rise, the hull of Echo 7 rang like a bell as the first energy barrage struck its shields. Captain Blackwood's consciousness flowed through the station's neural networks, orchestrating defensive systems that had been waiting centuries for this moment. "Shields, at 87%, he reported calmly. "The Valdorian fleet is using ion cannons, standard military doctrine. The Calarians are deploying mining lasers, probably hoping to cut through the hull for salvage. And the Etherians—" He paused. "The Etherians are trying to communicate directly with my consciousness. How refreshingly civilized." Dr. Zara Vex clung to a support rail as the station shook under another bombardment. Through the viewports, she could see the three fleets arranging themselves into attack formations. Each fleet represented roughly 50 vessels, from nimble fighters to massive dreadnoughts. Against any normal target, it would be overwhelming force. But Echo 7 was not a normal target. "Captain," she called out over the sound of charging weapons. "Systems, you're outnumbered 300 to 1. These are the combined fleets of 3 galactic powers." "You can't possibly—" "Dr. Vex," Blackwood interrupted gently, "may I share something with you about human military philosophy? We believe that any fortification worth building should be able to hold against impossible odds. Echo 7 was designed to survive the destruction of entire solar systems." The main view screen flickered to life, showing tactical displays that made Commander Irix's scaled hide ripple with recognition and fear. The station wasn't just armed. It was a fortress that happened to look like a research facility. 48. Heavy railguns, Irix read from the displays, his military training helping him interpret the human weapon systems. 12 plasma lance arrays, quantum torpedo bays, and what in the void are nightmare projectors, psychological warfare systems, Blackwood replied cheerfully. Humans discovered that most alien species have specific neural patterns that trigger primal fears. The nightmare projectors broadcast tailored fear frequencies, quite effective against large formations. As if to demonstrate, a pulse of invisible energy swept out from the station. Within moments, the tight attack formations of all 3 fleets began to break apart, as pilots and crew members were suddenly overwhelmed by species-specific terrors. Valdorian warriors, who feared nothing in conventional combat, found themselves paralyzed by visions of being consumed by microscopic parasites. Calarian hive minds experienced the horror of complete isolation. Etherian empaths were flooded with pure, undiluted hatred. "That's horrible," Naya whispered, her energy form flickering with distress. "The emotional resonance, it's like a scream that echoes in their souls." "War is horrible," Blackwood acknowledged. "But humans learned long ago that sometimes you have to be more terrible than your enemies to protect what you love." The station's counterattack began in earnest. Railguns that could accelerate projectiles to significant fractions of light speed opened fire, their tungsten penetrators designed to punch through any known shielding system. The first Valdorian cruiser to be hit simply ceased to exist, vaporized, by kinetic energy that turned its hull into expanding plasma clouds. But it was the plasma lances that truly demonstrated human engineering. Instead of simple energy beams, they projected coherent streams of stellar matter contained in magnetic bottles. When they struck their targets, they didn't just damage, they infected, spreading through hulls like liquid fire that burned at temperatures matching the core of stars. "Captain," Eric said quietly, his warrior's respect evident despite his fear. "This isn't a research station. This is a weapon platform." "It's both," Blackwood corrected. "Humans specialized in dual-purpose design. Every research station was also a fortress. Every hospital ship carried enough firepower to level cities. Every civilian vessel could become a warship in an emergency. We learned the hard way that the galaxy is not a gentle place." The three fleets regrouped, their commanders realizing they faced something far beyond their experience. The Valdorian admiral transmitted a demand for surrender, promising honorable treatment. The Calarian swarm mind offered to negotiate for access to human technology. The Etherian collective sent waves of peaceful intention, hoping to calm the situation. Blackwood's response was to activate the next layer of Echo 7's defenses. Throughout the station, sections began to unfold like mechanical flowers. What had appeared to be hull plating revealed itself as launch bays, disgorging swarms of automated fighters that moved with inhuman precision. Each drone was equipped with quantum entanglement communicators, allowing them to coordinate attacks faster than any organic pilot could react. "Magnificent," Zara breathed, watching the tactical display as hundreds of human-designed fighters engaged the combined fleets. They're not just following programmed patterns. They're learning, adapting to each enemy's tactics in real time. "Human military AI," Blackwood explained. "Each drone contains a fragment of strategic consciousness, limited but highly specialized. They share information instantaneously across the quantum network, turning individual fighters into components of a single vast intelligence." The battle that followed was unlike anything in recorded galactic history. The human drones fought with a combination of calculated precision and creative unpredictability that confused and terrified their opponents. They used debris from destroyed ships as weapons, coordinated with the station's heavy guns to create devastating crossfires, and employed tactics that bordered on the impossible. But more importantly, they were sending signals. "Captain," Naya said urgently, "I'm detecting quantum cascade transmissions spreading throughout the galaxy. Other stations are responding. Dozens of them." The view screen shifted to show a galactic map dotted with awakening lights. From the outer rim to the core worlds, echo stations were coming online, each one beginning to transmit the same message across all frequencies and in every known language. "People of the galaxy," Blackwood's voice echoed from every station simultaneously. "You stand in the presence of humanity's final testament. For 5 centuries you have lived in a universe made safe by our absence. You have divided our worlds, studied our ruins, and told yourselves comfortable stories about the peaceful species that simply vanished." The combined fleets had stopped firing, their commanders realizing they were witnessing history being rewritten. But we did not vanish quietly. We prepared. We planned. We built a network of stations like this one, each containing not just our knowledge and culture, but our will, our determination, our promise that even in death we would protect those who deserved protection and punish those who deserved punishment. On Echo 7's bridge, Zara felt a chill that had nothing to do with the station's temperature. "Captain, what exactly are you saying?" "I'm saying, Dr. Vex, that the 3 civilizations currently threatening this station are about to be judged. Each Echo station contains not just defensive systems, but evaluation protocols. We're going to determine which species deserve to inherit humanity's legacy, and which ones represent the kind of threat that necessitated the Exodus Protocol." The testing began immediately. On Calarian worlds, ancient human archives opened, offering advanced technologies and scientific knowledge to those who could prove they would use it wisely. Valdorian military installations found themselves facing strategic puzzles, and moral dilemmas, their responses being carefully cataloged and analyzed. Etherian collective consciousness networks were invaded by human thought patterns, engaging them in philosophical debates about the nature of consciousness and the responsibilities of power. But some worlds faced darker tests. Colonies built on former human settlements discovered that certain areas had been seeded with quantum viruses, dormant for centuries but now awakening to judge the worthiness of the current inhabitants. Slave worlds found their oppressors facing impossible choices as human liberation protocols activated, forcing them to choose between maintaining their power and surviving the consequences. "This is madness," Commander Erix whispered, watching reports flood in from across the galaxy. "You're destabilizing the entire galactic order." "The galactic order built itself on humanity's grave," Blackwood replied coldly. "Perhaps it's time for a new order, one that remembers why humans disappeared in the first place." On the bridge of Echo 7, the three visitors found themselves faced with their own test. The station systems had been analyzing them since the moment they arrived, studying their motivations, their actions, their deepest beliefs. "Dr. Vex," Blackwood said quietly, "you came here seeking knowledge, hoping to preserve human culture for its own sake. Your species has shown respect for what we left behind. The Calarian Collective will be offered full access to human scientific archives and defensive technologies." Zara's compound eyes widened. The implications were staggering. Human science was centuries ahead of current galactic standards. Such knowledge could transform her people into the dominant civilization in the galaxy. "Commander Erix," the captain continued, "you represent a warrior culture that understands the necessity of strength, but you also showed restraint, protecting the scientists rather than seeking personal glory. The Valdorian Defense Corps will be offered training programs and military technologies with the understanding that they will be used to protect, not conquer." Erix straightened to attention, his scaled hide reflecting his complex emotions. Honor, fear, and recognition of opportunity warred within him. "And Naya," Blackwood's voice softened, "your people's empathic abilities make you natural mediators and healers. The Etherian Collective will be offered the most precious gift we can give, the location of the human refugees." The silence that followed was profound. Naya's energy form brightened dramatically as the implications hit her. "Refugees?" she whispered. "Did you really think we would abandon the galaxy without ensuring our survival?" Blackwood asked. "The Exodus protocol didn't just hide humanity, it relocated them to a place where they could grow, develop, and eventually return stronger than ever." Through the viewports, they could see the three fleets withdrawing, their commanders receiving new orders as the galactic balance shifted moment by moment. Some echo stations had gone dark, their tests completed with negative results. Others blazed brighter than ever, offering their gifts to worthy species. "The testing phase is nearly complete," Blackwood announced. "In 72 hours, the Echo Network will make its final determinations. Species that have proven themselves worthy will receive humanity's legacy. Those that have failed," he paused, "will discover that some sleeping giants are best left undisturbed." As Echo 7 settled into a watchful orbit, its systems monitoring the galaxy-wide transformation it had triggered, Captain Blackwood offered his three visitors a choice. "You can return to your fleets, report what you've seen, and wait for the galaxy to decide its fate. Or you can remain here and help shepherd the transition. Help ensure that when humanity returns, they find a galaxy worth returning to." Zara looked at her companions, seeing her own decision reflected in their expressions. They had come seeking the past, but had instead found the future. The last echo of human civilization wasn't an ending, it was a beginning. And somewhere in the depths of space and hidden systems beyond the reach of current star maps, the true descendants of humanity waited for the signal that would tell them it was safe to come home. The galaxy had forgotten why it once feared humans. But memory, like an echo, has a way of returning when least expected, and this echo carried with it not just the voice of the past, but the promise of a future where humanity's children would never again face extinction alone. The last echo had spoken, and the galaxy would never be the same.